It's time for the Imperial Knight card by card after over a year. Let's get to it.
Time to play the game. Time to play the game.
What up, everybody? Scuffy here, and new intro. I hope you liked it. It's kind of a little bit of the old, little bit of the new. I'm not monetized as far as the channel goes, so I dig that intro theme. I do have a monetizable intro theme to go with it too. Anyways, I digress. Hope you're doing okay. It's been over a year since the Imperial Knights came out. I've held off on this card by card for a very long time because of the mechanics, the way the faction worked specifically. I really felt that they were going to get some massive adjustments. Adjustments came after a long time, I think 9 months, and they weren't very massive, although they were very effective. They were the kind of changes I think that needed to happen. So I finally feel comfortable doing the card by card, finally have time to do the card by card. We're going to do it. So let's dive into it. First off, before we talk about the Imperial Knights, we cannot talk about the Imperial Knights without talking about reactor, plasma, and what a weapon is. Just a basic overview. The Imperial Knight is a warlord feature. It has one face body. If you haven't played the Knights, you won't know, so that's why I'm explaining it to you. You got your face body, and then it's got two arms slots that basically take up a troop slot to the right and to the left. And to each of those arm slots, you can place a weapon. And the weapons have abilities. The abilities cost plasma. And just in the same way that the Thousand Suns generate Psyker to create Psyker energy to use for your Psyker tactics, the Night Houses have a ways to create plasma, which is then used by the weapons. Only by the weapons. That's very important to note. Unlike the Thousand Suns, who have got abilities as well as tactics that utilize the Psyker energy, the Night Houses just have weapons that utilize the reactor, that utilize the plasma. However, they're very powerful effects, and the fact is weapons have got health. We'll take a look at just a few of these here, but just as a basic, they've got 8 health or 10 health. So when your warlord takes damage, the weapon takes damage. When your warlord heals, the weapon heals. So it can be around for a very long time. It can't be targeted directly unless there is a bug feature in the game or something. You basically have to target the knight player themselves, and then you deal damage to both the knight player, the warlord, as well as the weapons onto them. Weapons have a variety of uses, from close combat, ranged, board suppression. They all do damage in one way, shape, or form. There's one that prevents damage, which is the shield. We'll talk about that at a later point. Plasma management is very important when you're talking about the Night House. You can't do weapons without plasma, and at some points in the game, your plasma generation can be low, and then that prevents you from firing off your weapon or reusing your weapon. So, I mean, that's something to manage consistently turn after turn. However, it's not as difficult as it may seem. Most chassis start with a reactor 1. There's ways to improve that, and there's warlords that can play with that. There's also troops that increase your reactor. There is also, in addition to weapons, you have your pilots. So when you build a deck, you are picking your warlord, which is basically your knight, the actual vehicle, and then you pick your pilot. And that is who's playing it, and they have the ability. So you have a passive with the vehicle, and then you have an ability with the warlord. So this is only showing up the choose a weapon and put in your hand because I have Markin Hrothman as the pilot, because that's his ability. So if I were to put Orlok in there, my ability would then become pay 2 energy to gain 2 plasma. So there's a lot going on with the Imperial Knights. That in of itself is very confusing. Is very it throws people off. It's not just a new mechanic. There's several new mechanic and concepts that go into this faction nobody else has, and that resulted in a lot of mixed feelings about the Knights. When I say mixed, I should probably clarify it was very highly one-sided, but there were some people who played them because they did very well. They did effectively what they do very well. Some of that has passed, but they still play the same way they have always played. Now, initially, when they first were released, if you stunned the Warlord, you did not stun the weapons, and that was a big difference. Whereas we're talking about damaging the Warlord damages the weapons, you can stun the Warlord and the weapons could still operate. Didn't quite make sense. That has since been changed. Now if you stun the Warlord, you stun the weapons. I think Everguild's intent with that really, because this is a Warlord-focused faction. If you stun the Warlord can't do anything, and every card in this pool is really enhancements for the Warlord. There's a couple troops that do things to give to the Warlord. That's really all it is. So if you're stunning the Warlord repeatedly throughout the match against like a Mortarion or a Caleb Decima, if you're playing Engron or you're playing any other Warlord, you have got troops, you've got tactics, you've got damage you can throw out there. If you're playing Knights, you don't. Because the idea is everything goes to have your Warlord be the one that's directing that damage. So I think that's why they did that way initially. But I think as time has gone on, they've changed their perspective on that. They've tooled it back, and I think generally that was well received. So here we are. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the chassis first. Now, there's only 3, and I was surprised about that. I thought we might get 4 vehicles and 3 pilots, or 4 pilots and 4 vehicles. We got 3 vehicles, but 4 pilots. That's actually a combination of possible 12 different variations and ways to play. Some are definitely better than others. Castus Orlok here, this is the legendary. Has Reactor 1, and its passive is simple. When you put a weapon on, it gives +1 health. That's it. It does not do anything else. It doesn't give this 2 for 2. That's really not great. You get 40 health with it. There's no reckoning. There's no transformation. That's all you're getting is 1 additional health on your weapons. Now, 1 additional health might make a difference in some games, but typically it doesn't. So generally speaking, this is actually the weakest of the Knight houses. It doesn't have a high reactor. It doesn't have high energy, high speed. It just has +1 health to its weapons. Now, Cerastus Orlok, this was the shining baby when this one came out, because it starts with 3 plasma. So it's not only does it have reactor 1, but it has 3 plasma, and you can basically turn 1 have 4 energy, which means you're using a weapon twice, or you're just stockpiling it from there. It's a great start. It's a great way to get going. Whereas any other chassis basically has got to spend 2 turns to get 2 plasma. A combination of Cerastus along with Alzahar Orlak basically gave you unlimited. You didn't have to worry about plasma. There was no need to worry about plasma whatsoever with this combo setup. You were going to have it when you needed it, and you could just fire with battle cannons at the ready at any given time. This is still a good body just to have the additional plasma, because that supports all the warlords, because plasma goes with all the weapons, so it's not a bad thing to have. Personally, I enjoyed Questoris Orlok. I like this one a lot more. Actually, not the Orlok. The Orlok portion is the pilot. Questoris I played with Horothum. And you can't see it because he's on here. I'd actually have to go to my Questoris Horothum. Hang on, let's just do that. Let's change my deck to Questoris, and then you can actually see Questoris Maccabeus. Played quite a few games here. Had a lot more fun with Maccabeus in general, but Questoris as it is has got the 1 extra energy. It starts with 1 extra energy. It's 30 health, and it also comes with a Reaper Chainsword. Now that's not a whole lot. The Reaper Chainsword is just a way to basically deal with early game, 3 health troops, Jubok or the like. That's nice. You really want it for the extra energy. 1 extra energy more allows you to play your 3 energy abilities, tactics, troops Asteroid Sanctuary, whatever it was. I had really enjoyed this for a low initiative warlord, having that little extra ramp. It was very fun. I preferred that over the Cerastus, but Cerastus definitely has got some gall to it. I don't think you can go wrong with either of those two. The pilot choices are also what drives your deck more than the chassis. The chassis is just a little something. Do you find that you want more energy in the early game, or do you find that you want more plasma options late game because you don't want to have to worry about fishing for plasma generation? If you're playing Orlok, you're not worried about either of those two for some reason, and you just want more health, and that's okay too. Now, the pilots are really where the abilities come from. So 2 energy to gain 2 plasma with Al-Zahar. Again, this was the guy that everybody was playing for quite some time. That's, like I said, you're never going to be shy on plasma. That works all the time. The downside is that when you're using your ability as a pilot, the warlord itself cannot attack. So you have to time that carefully, because there are some tactics that basically feed into having your warlord directly attack as opposed to having the weapons attack for you. If you're playing weapons like chain blades and chain swords or whatnot, like that's increasing the attack of your warlord, so that way they can attack. So if you use your warlord to just gain plasma, he's not attacking that turn. Elsbeth. Now, I like Elsbeth. I do think that she is definitely, however, the worst pilot. Her ability, +3 health to your weapons. That's actually not bad if you want a weapon to stick around for a while. I really got that battle can now. I want my battle can to not go away. It's going to have 3 health. The problem is it costs 2 energy, and it does nothing for your warlord. Your warlord gains no health. I've had games when I was testing it, playing games, I had my weapons up to health 20 plus. They weren't going anywhere. But my warlord had 8 health. So it didn't matter if I took 8 damage, the game was over. I do think that if she had 2 energy to give +0/+2 to your warlord and weapons, increasing the warlord's health pool as well as the weapon's health, that would be better. Maybe lose the act again part if it got that. Yeah, I would say definitely lose the act again part if it got that. But I mean, that's really it. This is a weak ability otherwise. It's not offensive at all. It's prolonging what you have, but it does nothing for your main body, which really is what decides the game. So, eventually Elsbeth kind of falls off for the other 3 warlords. Now, Kieran Gravewalker, a lot of people play him. He's probably, I would say, the most popular. You could argue second most, but I think he really is the most popular. 2 energy draws a weapon from your deck. We know the power of card drawing. We know the power of targeted card drawing. We've seen that in Cypher. We've seen it in Horus. We've seen it in any warlord that draws cards. It's beneficial. It greatly gets you your things right out the gate, but more importantly, it gets you a weapon out the gate. And if you build your deck, you know what weapons are in your deck, and therefore you know what weapons you're going to draw. You're not going to draw something that you don't really want to use, and you're going to draw something that you put in that deck for a reason. Now, the downside is you're not attacking, and once you're out of weapons, this ability is a dead ability. The trade-off to that is Markin Hrothman, who is the opposite. He's choosing a weapon from outside of your deck. It's a choice of 3, and you get it in your hand. Personally, I like this one more, but that's just from a deck building concept, because, and I think I talked about this at some point when the Knights houses were first released, I really like what this opens up, because yes, it's random what he generates, but he will always have the ability, I will never run out of weapons, ever. I might have weapons that aren't necessarily ideal, but I'm never going to run out of them. More importantly, what this allows me to do is double up on some weapons that are very potent or very defensive. It also allows me to have, instead of having a deck that might include 4 to 8 weapons, that's 4 to 8 cards I don't need, period. And instead, that's 4 to 8 cards I can put in with troops, I can put in with tactics, I can put in something else that's going to make more of a difference. It really opens up my deck construction options. That's why I like him a lot. I like this one. Personally, I think this is my favorite one, although I do enjoy Gravewalker and Orlok as well with certain builds. Elsbeth, again, I played her. I have fun with her. I like her. I think she's really got potential if they just tweak this ability a little bit. She could do something if she increased the health of the actual knight as well. So, again, if you're playing Knight Houses, you get a Warlord, you're going to automatically get Warlock. You get him. He comes with whatever chassis you get. But if you have the ability to look to try to get Gravewalker or Hrothmum, I don't think Hrothmum's ever been in the shop, so he's a hard one to get. But Gravewalker certainly has been out there a few times. And it doesn't matter if you're getting Cerastus, Questoris, or Acastus. Acastus, you may not want, but 40 health is 40 health. So, let's talk about the rest of the card pool, because that's really where it's going to get interesting. Now, House Orlok. House Orlok chooses a weapon, create a copy of it in your hand. Kind of like Hrothmum, but for 1 energy. That's it. It's a tactic. So if I have Hrothmum, guess what? I don't need House Orlok. That's one less card I have to consider in my deck. However, if you want a 1 energy pinch play option, kind of like a very refined crucial choice, House Orlok is not a bad tactic to go for, especially if you don't have all the weapons. If you don't have all the weapons in your collection, or you really want a Graviton Cannon, which is the game closer, House Orlok could be a way for you to get it. I like the fact that there is an option there for players who might not have a full Night House collection to still play with certain cards that can give them the tools that a full Night House collection could get. So keep that in mind. That's not a bad card in certain circumstances. House Vironi is definitely, boy, this thing is powerful. Heal your weapons fully, and they can act again. Now, I can't overstate, I can't state enough how powerful this card is. Late game, allowing you to fire a Graviton Cannon twice, maybe 3 times if you have 2 Graviton Cannons, or 4 times. Why not? Just do 40 damage out the gate with House Vironi, or using it very cleverly with a las cutter or a flame cannon, or even just a battle cannon going off twice, because you play 2 battle cannons and then you play Vironi and you blast away with 2 more battle cannons. This is a powerful card. This is definitely, probably, if not number 1, the number 2 legendary that the faction wants. This is just really, really crazy. Now, you don't have to use it to win the game every game, but you definitely can use it every game to help win the game or solidify your position, or at least try to stand a fighting chance if you're really having a bad go at it. House Vironi is powerful. Very good. Martian Emissary. I love this card. This is a great 1 energy common. Boom. Rally. I get 2 plasma for 1 energy. If my opponent doesn't kill it, and they should try to, it's got 3 health. It's only got 1 attack. It's pretty puny, but if they don't, I'll bounce them back to my hand, and I can have 2 plasma at any given time when I need it. For 1 energy, you get 2 plasma, and you get a little puny body on the board. That's it. It's not a whole lot to it, but for a faction that wants that plasma, and has, at sometimes when you're playing against a knight, or your opponent is playing against you, and you've got 0 plasma, they're thinking, he can't fire that battle cannon. But you drop a Martian Emissary, and you can now fire that battle cannon. It's as simple as that. It's a 1-card thing. But this goes in every deck. There's no reason not to put this in any deck, unless you are literally playing a Knight's deck that does not go off of plasma. The Reaper Chainfist has got 10 health, which is nice. Very cool. I like that art, actually, looking at it up close. But that's it. 1 energy, gives your Warlord +1/+0. Not fantastic. It gives your Warlord 3 attack. If you have 2 of these, your Warlord can get 4 attack. That's cool. But that's all it's for 2 plasma, and your Warlord then has to face bash. And if your Warlord is face bashing, your Warlord's taking damage. But if your Warlord's taking damage, your Reaper Chainfist is taking damage. So, as far as the close combat weapons go, this is the arguably the worst. But they all build off of this premise here from here. So Reaper Chainfist is not something that you're going to put in your deck. It is something that you might use from time to time if you have no better options and you've got Orlok or Hrothmum to generate it. Now, Las Cutter, on the other hand, is quite good. 1 plasma, deals 1 damage to all enemies, and if any die, it acts again. It should be very obvious how effective this one is. Anything that you're able to attack and take it to 1 health, and then you follow up with the Las Cutter, and then the Las Cutter kills it, and you can follow it up again. Or a board full of Jaegers. Or how about a unlimited Jaeger board, because your opponent has got that 6 energy troop, and you have enough plasma to kill them all, kill them all, kill them all the while dealing 1 damage to your opponent's warlord for every point of plasma you're using, and then face striking to end the game. Or how about using this to drop 1 troop from 1 health to 0, a troop that was at 2 health to 1 to 0, 3, 2, 1, and you can wipe a whole board. You have to have the plasma to do it. You have to have the right setup to do it, but that is not at all hard to do. Las Cutter is a VIP in many games. It is the moment you put a Las Cutter on your warlord, your opponent is going to try to get rid of it because they recognize the threat to it. So keep that in mind and consider 2 of those in your decks. House Divine. Now, I like this. I used this a lot more when it first came out. I've since kind of dialed it back a little bit and used other cards. But heals 3 to a friendly unit, and it gives frontline to your next turn. Typically, you use this on your warlord to heal him and then give him frontline. But you don't have to. You could use it on some troops and give them frontline so your opponent cannot directly attack your warlord. It's flexible, and that's what's nice. It's 2 for 3, which is nice as well. However, if I'm going to try to heal or prevent damage, I'd rather have shield. And Iron Gauntlet Shield is definitely one of my favorites. It's a low-cost weapon. It's not offensive. It's all defensive. But for 2 plasma, your warlord gains shield. If you have got a plasma-generating deck, a deck that can make plasma without ease, or you want to always have the options to be defensive, just having 1 shield on, especially against like a direct damage deck, it throws off your opponent's momentum. They've got to now break your shield before they can do anything else. And if they don't get rid of this gauntlet with their direct damage, you can shield up again and they've got to start it all over again, especially if you're able to heal it. Iron Gauntlet is definitely one that is underrated. I think a lot of people don't play it, but I think the game state kind of is okay for that. It doesn't require you to be defensive. It requires you to be more offensive than anything. But I think that this is definitely a good card to include, especially if you don't have a huge knight collection and you want to, fight it out. Now, speaking of shields, if you don't have the weapon and you just want shield, you can give Ionic Flare Shield. This gives your warlord shield, and then you draw a card. Now, the difference between this one and that one is one is temporary. It's just for, for the one time that you played it, and the other one is always on your warlord. However, Ionic Flare Shield does draw a card, which is very nice. And early on, and actually for quite a long time, the faction had a lot more card draw options. Too many. Quite frankly, that was a big complaint. That was a big thing. If ever so many cards draw cards, this faction at late game could just play those cards to get what they need to win the game versus playing consistently earlier and then having a few cards in hand to make the difference. Ionic Flare Shield kept the card draw, which is fine. It's a defensive option. The card that lost the card draw was Overtaxed Reactor. Gain 3 plasma. This used to be gain 3 plasma for 2 and draw a card. So late game, I could play Overtaxed Reactor, gain 3 plasma, draw a card, and then that card could be something to give me some more damage option. Maybe it's another Overtaxed Reactor. I'm drawing another card, and now I've got a battle cannon that I can play and then fire twice because I've drawn 2 cards, and I've also got House Fironi. The potential that this had, this is just one piece of many, was a problem because you could have an opponent at 0 energy with 1 card in hand, and if that 1 card in hand was Overtaxed Reactor, potentially they had 2+ cards in hand, and that was deceiving. That wasn't really holding up. Since it lost the draw card, it's still a very good card. I still include this in my decks because you never know when you need 3 plasma, and just to be able to surprise your opponent with 3 plasma is great. However, you do need things in your hand or on the board to actually make use of it, and I think that's fair, and that's the right card. It's a very good card. I recommend it for almost every night deck. So it's a good card. Now, I don't necessarily recommend Plasma Generator. However, it does have 5 health, and if it is a turn 1 play, It's not bad. It can distract your opponent. It's got reactor 1, so as a turn 1 play, basically you're now gaining 2 plasma every turn if your opponent doesn't destroy this thing. 5 health, it's possible that it might not get destroyed right away. It might survive a turn or two. And if it survives and you have nothing else to do, you can use this ability to gain even more plasma. Now, the downside of it is, it doesn't need to do anything else. That's all it does is make plasma. It's a generator. Come on, it's a plasma generator. It doesn't make anything to heal. There are other cards, I think, that do something more effectively. Again, that's one reason why I like Martian Emissary. Emissary may not survive, but it's going to give me that plasma right away. This doesn't have any sort of rally effect. This has to survive in order for it to start making plasma for me. So, Tech Engineer, another powerful, nice rally, some good Blanche art. Rally, choose a weapon, put it in your hand. Again, very similar to House Orlok. The difference is you're getting a troop, a 2/2 troop. That's it. He's good. If you had to choose between either of those, I would probably pick the Tech Engineer if you're playing with more troops. If you're not playing with troops and you have a faster deck, then House Orlok is the way to go. Neither of them are wrong, though. Now, Hellrider is, unfortunately, in a state where it's not it's the worst legendary of this faction pool. Like, that's just the way to say it. Your warlord gets terror. That in itself is awesome for a faction that can have weapons that increase your warlord's attack. That's really cool. You create 2 Reaper Chainfists in your hand. Again, you get these 2 cards in your hand, so you can make your warlord 4 attack with terror. That's cool. So you don't have to worry about that face bash back. But that's it. Terror doesn't matter if you're attacking your opponent's warlord. Terror is just taking out troops. And as we said, the close combat nature of the Night Houses is kind of on the weak end of things. So Hellrider is really a legendary that supports a weak aspect of this faction, which is why it's not so great. Now, it has its place. It certainly has its place, but it's not fantastic. It's not required. If you see this in the shop, but you don't have a whole lot of Knights cards, don't worry about picking this up. Save your gems for something much more effective like Vironi or Graviton Cannon. You'll be much happier. Now, House Erthagon, I like this card. It's pretty simple. Your warlord gets sneak attack and +1/+0. I would rather play 3 energy for sneak attack and 1 guaranteed plus attack versus terror and then having to pay 1 more energy and 1 plasma to gain +1/+0 that isn't sneak attack. This is much more handier in a pinch. It's more energy efficient, it's more card efficient, it's just all around great. And being able to sneak attack against your opponent's warlord versus a troop, bigger thumbs up. Now, does this go in every deck? No. If you don't have any close combat weapons, if you're not going close combat at all, and that's, again, very easy not to, then don't do Erthagon. Just don't. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. However, if you are considering with the Chain Fists or some of these other ones that we're going to get to here in a second, Shock Lance and such, then Erthagon isn't a bad option. But there are some better options, and we're going to talk about those too. Maintenance Servitor. Here we have another rally effect, gain plasma. Rally, gain 2 plasma, great. And if he sticks around, he can heal 2 to your warlord. And again, if he's healing 2 to your warlord, he's also healing 2 to your weapons. This guy doesn't have to go in every deck, but I do put him in most of my decks. I like him. I like the free plasma. I like the 2/4 ability. That typically doesn't survive, but if he does, I have the option to heal. It's just not a bad thing to have. It's a decent common, and if you're looking for a space to fill, he can fill that space. Now, Munition Depot, when this card came out, was problematic because instead of Relentless, it was Resolution, reduce by 1 the cost of weapons in your hand. Now it's a Relentless, and at 3 energy, it's still very much a threat. However, it's not as threatening with the Resolution. Resolution is without a doubt like better than Relentless in terms of timing. Like right out the gate, I play Munition Depot, every weapon card in my hand goes down by 1. And then the next turn, if my opponent didn't kill it, they go down by 1. Well, now your opponent has a whole turn to try to get rid of Munition Depot. And then every turn, they have a whole turn to get rid of Munitions Depot. So not as powerful, but early on, this card saw a lot more play because of the resolution. If you're not seeing it now, it's because Relentless is not as good as Resolution. It's properly statted, and it's a decent ability. If you play this turn 2, and you happen to have a Graviton Cannon in your hand, and it survives, then you've got something. If it doesn't survive, then you've wasted your whole play basically, and that's why I'd pass on it. Now I see people play Ocular Arcmagos. This is not a bad anti-stealth card. This is actually a really good anti-stealth card for the faction. All enemies lose stealth. That includes your opponent's warlord. That includes if they've got multiple warlords, they all lose stealth, and you draw 2 cards. Doesn't do any damage. It just gives you 2 cards to hopefully get some weapons to do something with. It's actually really good. The downside is it doesn't do anything with precognition or duplicitous. You do have to be a little bit more careful with how you play against those matchups or those ward, especially troops with ward or warlords with ward. With warlords who gain ward, could be difficult when you're playing them, but this is not a bad. I see a lot of decks pop usually at least one of it in this deck. Again, drawing 2 cards for 3 at the very least. If you're not playing a stealth enemy, 3 for 2, that's fair. That's fair. Now, Battle Can is arguably, it's in the top 3. This is a top 3 weapon. If you had to pick 3 weapons to put into your every night deck, you want to include the Las Cutter, you want to include Battle Cannon, and you want to include the Graviton Cannon. Everything else after that is optional and can be up for debate. But Battle Cannon, pay 2 to deal 3. And you're not paying 2 energy, you're paying 2 plasma. That's a free resource to deal 3 damage. And if you set up your plasma generation and your warlord or your troops appropriately, you'll always be able to fire this for 3 damage. Now, tell me how that's wrong. Pay 2 to deal 3. Some people don't like it. Some people wish it was 3 targeted, kind of the way Abaddon deals 3 damage to troops, or Santar deals 3 damage to Astartes and infantry, but not vehicles. That could be fair. However, it's not a permanent ability. This can be easily removed. So I think there's some debate as far as how effective it is. Plus, there's only 2 of them. You could make more. You certainly could make more copies of battle cannons. And I've played games where I've had 3 or 4 battle cannons, or 5, but which is frustrating. But it can be dealt with. So I think 2 for 3, 2 plasma for 3 is fair. Now, Shock Lance, I like the idea here. 1 energy, your warlord gains first strike and +1/+0 for 3 energy. That weapon is superior to the Rapier Chain Fist in every way, shape, and form. There's no doubt about it. First strike, same attack. What's not to like? Like, if you really want to go a close combat knight, you want to have the Cerastus Shock Lance. You have to. You have to have that. Because when you're first striking, you're not taking damage back, which means that this 10 health weapon will stick around for longer. The problem is close combat knights. It's a difficult build. It's not as an effective build. Now, Blessed Auto Simalacra, 4 for 3, return it to your deck, draw a card. This is a good card. This is still a good card, although the faction has kind of waxed and waned in its use of it. But being able to always have a heal 3 in your deck. You pay 4 to heal 3, it goes back to your deck. You draw a card, maybe you get this back, and you play it again, and you heal 3. Maybe it sits in your deck, and you draw it up later on. That's not bad. Having 1 of these in your deck is basically better than an Armor of Mars. By comparison, if you just take a look for Armor of Mars, the current Armor of Mars, as of right now, is 6 energy to heal 7. Okay? So you heal more, but you pay more. However, your warlord has 10 health or less, you got to return this to your... So basically, your warlord has to be at like 1 or 2 health when you play this card for this to go back to your deck. Whereas opposed to the Night House's Simulacrum, this is just going to always go to your deck. It's only 4 for 3, but that's not a problem at all. This is a better... It's really sad that that's better than Armor of Mars. Favorite of Mars, I feel like this just should be always considered. Anytime you can increase your Warlord's plasma or your reactor out the gate, if you can play this on 4 energy, do it, because every turn after that you're basically generating 2 plasma. That's really powerful. It's not too powerful, but it's definitely powerful enough where at that point you don't have to heavily lean on troops to rally and give you plasma in the same way. Now the downside of that is at 4 energy you're not playing any troops, you're not playing any weapons, and the game state 4 energy is when your opponent can have 1 or 2 troops dropping down. That's when you want to deal with them. And if things start to get out of hand and you don't have crowd control options, then Reactor 2 does you no good. So time it right. Sometimes I'll pass on playing a favorite of Mars at 1 turn to play it the next turn if I have to deal with a threat. But if I can, I always try to put at least 1 of it in the deck. Now, I feel like I can't not talk about Flame Cannon to some point. First off, this is okay. 2 to deal 2 to the enemy warlord and adjacent units. That's what it should have been when it was released. It took several changes to get it to this state. Previously, the Flame Cannon was what the Las Cutter was, but dealing 2 damage, and then if any die, this weapon can act again. Basically, the games were won and decided by Flame Cannon. Like, every deck was Night House, Flame Cannon, Battle Cannon. That's it. Don't put anything else in there. Your opponent puts any troops in play, you can Flame Cannon them all away, one by one. I had several games where I really just like highlighted how bonkers it was. My opponent would Assault Harvests, dropping 2 large, 8, 9 health troops, and in my turn follow up playing, a couple of cards and then activating my Flame Cannon multiple times. I eliminated them all before he even got a chance to use them. It was just bonkers. Things like that shouldn't exist. When a single Flame Cannon can thwart the entire Iron Hands card pool with Ferrous Manus at its head, that's a problem. It took them a while. They corrected the problem. They addressed the problem. They corrected and revised it again. And this is what we have now. And this is good. It's not great. It's not bad. It's good. It's a great crowd control option if your opponent plays stuff just next to the warlord, like 1 or 2 troops. Your better option is still Las Cutter. But Las Cutter combined with Flame Cannon is quite deadly. Now, boy, now this card here, House Maccabeus. The first time I saw this card, I said it was bonkers. And I think bonkers is still applicable because House Maccabeus had draw a card on it. It doesn't have draw a card on it anymore. This was a card that lost draw a card, but it still has your warlord gains +4/+0 to your next turn. This is an epic. Now, a while ago, not even that long, 2 weeks ago, Corn's Favor, which was a legendary for 5, was doing much the same for every warlord. House Maccabeus does this for Knights. I'm not going to compare neutrals or faction by faction. My point is, House Maccabeus could include 2 copies of this card in their deck. And at 8 energy, they're giving their warlord +8. That's a 10 attack warlord. That's not counting cards like Drilling Sight to allow you to play Orders from Terra, which, do the math, that's 20 attack. That's not counting having existing weapons that might increase your attack further, giving you first strike, or weapons that are just going to deal damage outright before your warlord attacks for 10. House Maccabeus is a must-have. Make no doubt about it. House Maccabeus is absolutely must. Not only are we talking about attacking on your turn, this lasts until your next turn. So if your 10 attack didn't kill that Angron, it will on his turn because he has Berserk and he has no choice but to slam into you for 10 as well. This is a great weapon against Kabanda. This is a great weapon against Angron, or anything where your opponent has got large troops that they want to attack your warlord with. They may not survive if your warlord has 6. You'll take damage, but if you kill their board in the effort, then that's worth it. So, House Maccabeus, 2 copies of. Absolutely, you will not regret it. Household Guard, more Blanchard. I feel like half this faction is Blanchard. They're okay. For 4, you have a 2/5 that can gain +1/+2 every turn for 1 energy. That's nice. The problem is they have to survive or not be bounced with Melgator, which is entirely possible. But they're okay. I would rather play the combined arms to get 2 frontline troops that are 3/4 versus spending 2 turns to get a 4/9 frontline, a single frontline. Just not as effective for me. Now, Tech Priest Adjutant, these guys are good, but they're only good if you have weapons on your Warlord or you're going to play a weapon that has got cost to it. They basically make your las cutters fire for free, which is fantastic. Again, in that infinite Jaeger scenario that I painted out there, imagine if you have a Tech Priest Adjutant and you don't have to worry about plasma. You just ping your enemy's whole board, kill all the Jaegers that regenerate, and then wipe their Warlord out to 0. That's entirely possible. But just making your flame cannon fire for 1 is nice, or having your battle cannon fire for 2 or for 1 for 3 is nice. So they have a place. 3/5, 5 health is okay. They're all right. If you don't have a whole lot of weapons, if your idea is to go high plasma generation, maybe you don't need the Tech Priest because you're always going to have plasma. So then maybe you consider putting something else in there. Now the Arcmagos, this is another good. This used to be a 5/6. It's now a 5/5. Probably the second best legendary. Third? He's in the top 3. This guy's a top 3 legendary for the faction. For 5, you get the effect to either choose: do you heal 4, do you gain 4 plasma, or do you draw a weapon from your deck? 9 times out of 10, you're going to heal 4, but usually that 10th time you'll generate. I have never used him to draw a weapon from my deck, but that's also, to be fair, that's also because typically I play with Rotham or Gravewalker, so I'm never short on weapons. That's never been an issue for me. However, if you are playing with Elsbeth or Orlok, maybe you might use him to pull weapons from your deck. Doubt it, though. I think you're probably going to heal or give yourself some plasma. And then after that, you have a 5/5 body that your opponent really wants to take care of because, first off, they don't want to take 5 themselves. Second off, he has Reactor 1. So this is a very good card. Buys you some time, gives you some options, does everything it's supposed to do. If you see this in the shop and you want to play Night Houses, pick him up. Bolt Cannon. Bolt Cannon is not bad. I don't like seeing it sometimes when it comes up as an option, but I also don't like seeing it when I'm playing troops and my opponent plays a Bolt Cannon and then proceeds to whittle down all my troops. 3 energy to deal 4 damage to a troop. Now here's that targeted, right? Here's that targeted. We're talking about how Battle Cannon is 2 to deal 3 to anything. Now we've got 3 that deals 4 to a troop, any type of troop, and then it can act again. So there is some targeting there. Now it's high cost at 5, does make it a little kind of you have to have 5 energy to play it and then have the 3 plasma, and you certainly have got to have lots of plasma if you want to fire this over and over again at troops. So it is plasma consuming at the highest level. Communications Relay. Now I don't see this card enough and I like it. I wish we could. Every time I look at it, I don't put it in there. For 5 energy, it can be bounced with Melgator, but it's a 3/6 structure that makes all your opponent's tactics cost 1 more, and it draws you a card for 1 energy. It's really good. I just wish it cost 4 or that it had 7 health for 5. But I can't complain. Just playing this out there against some decks can make your opponent reconsider their options, and now they have to deal with this relay that has got 6 health and that has 3 attack, and that can take some time, and that time gives you options to play your stuff as well. I think if we would have had a frontline Knight Warlord, Communications Relay would be a much more effective card for that particular Warlord to park them behind. They get frontline, you can't get rid of their relay. The relay is giving them cards. That would be something I like to see. Now Storm Spear Rocket Pod, this is definitely easily a replacement for defensive satellites for this faction. Deals 2 to 3, so instead of dealing 1 to 4, it deals 2 to 3, which is a tighter window but a better window. And that's all enemies. And then for each unit killed, you get a plasma. That's this. There's no complaints there. You don't have to draw a card. You're dealing widespread damage. If you can, put 2 of these in your deck. You won't regret it. Combined Arms is questionable. Not every deck needs it, but you should think about it if you want to have some frontline to protect your Warlord. Again, you're putting in 2, 3, 4 Epsilon Row 3/2s. So Epsilon Row 3/2 is a Mechanicum. This guy here, you've seen him around. These guys have been around for a long time. Not a bad front line. Not a bad front line. They're not the best, but it's solid. It's consistent for 6. You're getting 8 energy worth of troops. I like it. Corrupt usurpation. Corrupt usurpation. Usurpation. You know what? What it is basically it's these guys here like getting all like messed up and perverted by Slanesh and turning and whatnot. The snake cult. They take control of an enemy troop, then return to your hand. The Night Houses don't have any hard removal tactics. They have a targeted hard removal weapon. But this one here allows you to take control of an enemy troop and return to your hand. It's not removing it, and most of the games I've seen this used on, you use it on a high-cost troop that you never play, but basically you deny your opponent the option to play it, or recover it, or if it's a Death Shroud or a defensive force, this takes control of it, and then it goes to your hand, and it doesn't respawn because of the backlash effect on their board. It's a good way to get around that card. It's a high cost, but it's a legendary, so bear that in mind. Plasma Regulators. Reactor 1, this has can't attack. It's got 8 health though. However, this actually generates plasma and heals to your Warlord, which is also healing to your weapons. The Thermic Plasma Regulators, by far, are awesome compared to the Plasma Generators for 2. Now, they cost a lot more, and they can still be returned to hand by Melgator, but they are really good. If your opponent cannot get rid of these, they will regret it, because every turn you're going to get plasma, which increases your threat potential with weapons, and you're going to heal, which is also going to prolong your game. So it's a hard card to fit in. That's the problem. In some decks, once you start putting in weapons and tactics, it's hard to make those call and say, okay, well, what do I put in my deck? I don't have room. If you don't have a legendary Dravok, put in Regulators. It costs a little bit more, doesn't have a rally effect, but it can be just as effective and impactful. If you don't have some of these other, rare weapons, epic weapons, I should say. If you don't have these epic tactics, then consider putting in some of the common tactics or the rare weapons to kind of fill the spot. The deck will improve over time as the cards go in there. You can't put them all in, but they all have goodness. They all have goodness. Side and Protocols. I like this card. This is another one that is hard for me to justify, or I can't say justify, hard for me to squeeze in sometimes. I think it really works better when I'm playing Hrothgar because I have that extra room in my deck. I literally have 4 cards, if that are weapons in my deck, and everything else is anything else I want to be. And Side on Protocols is one of those things because this card here heals 3 to my Warlord. And then I get the effect of a Forge World, of a Forge Complex. The Forge Complex, if you don't know, is a 5 energy legendary that says create a Mechanicum troop in your hand. Now, the difference with this and that, obviously, is number 1, it's 6 energy, right? And number 2, it's a Mechanicum infantry, not just any troop, so I'm not going to get vehicles. But I am going to get infantry, and they are going to be Mechanicum. And it's rare, not legendary, so if I was building a certain deck, I could put 2 in here, and every turn I'm creating 2 Mechanicum infantry. You might think, well, Mechanicum infantry, that's a lot of lame stuff. And there is, certainly Arcadius, there's Epsilon Sigma. These are bodies that your opponent has to deal with. There's Oedipi. But there's also Melgator. There's also Secretary Axior. There's also some pretty good front lines. There's Sibilans. There's Pi Alphas. These are just the low end. This is just the 3 energy. If we go higher up, then we get to ones that actually start doing damage. We're not talking vehicles here, so I can't count the Castellux, but I can talk about something like Secretary Protector Or how about the Sigma Phi? These are not bad. These are not, I won't give you Romare because Romare is actually, Romare is a infantry. I'm thinking Coil Zeth. No, where's the demon? There it is, Telemont. It won't give you Telemont because Telemont is a demon. But it will give you Coriel Zeth, potentially. It could give you Urtzi Malevolus. Imagine generating 2 of those every turn. Again, it's a very specific build. You have to be at 6 energy. You have to give up that 6 energy to do it. I've done it. It's fun. It's not the best way to play, but it is fun to do. And I do like the fact that it heals 3 and you can have 2 copies. So, Tempest Warblade. This card is overcosted. This card is overcosted. 2 energy, your warlord gains +2/+0, and Battle Honor can act again. The idea with Tempest Warblade really is you have Tempest Warblade comboing with something like Shocklands. So now your warlord, for basically 2/+1, so 3 plasma, your warlord gains +3 attack, has first strike, and can act again. That's the idea. The problem is, that's hard to do, because this costs 6 energy, and this costs 3 energy. So even if I play a Shock Lance at 3 energy, I have to keep my Shock Lance at full health for 3 turns before I play my Tempest Warblade, unless I'm willing to wait until 9 energy to play them both together, and that never happens. It's not really good at all. I think if Tempest Warblade cost 5, it would be more fair, or even 4. Even if this cost 4 and it just gave your warlord +1/+0 and Battle Honor can act again, I think that would be fair. It would increase the speed at which the close combat knight builds go, because really when we're talking about close combat knights, that is the combo. That's the combo that you want to see. You can end it with a Hecaton Claw. We'll get to Hecaton Claw just in a sec. But really, this is what keeps the board clear. This as well as first strike. And then you throw in other little attacks here and there that maybe increase your attack by +1/+0, House Maccabeus, things like that. But that's 3 or 4 cards over 3 or 4 turns, whereas House Maccabeus, you play 1 card right away and you're good to go. You see, that's where the swing is. That's why close combat knights just doesn't work the same way. Crusade of Iron, draw 3 cards, reduced by 1 when your warlord is attacked. This is a good card to have in your hand, opening turn, but your warlord has to be attacked 7 times. That's not hard to do because your warlord is going to get attacked a lot. But this is just a card that just draws 3 cards. It doesn't do anything else. Like, the extra text here is just how to reduce the cost of it. Doesn't do anything after you've drawn the 3. You still have to play the 3. At least with Ocular Arcmagos, you're getting it at a reduced cost already. You're drawing 2 cards instead of 3, but your enemy is losing stealth. If you have to pick between the 2, Ocular Arcmagos is the way to go. Now, Hecaton Claw. This could be a game ender if you have built up enough plasma. If you've been playing one of those plasma decks and you built up enough plasma, your warlord gains +2/+0 and cleave +1 this turn, and it can act again. I mean, you can make your claw pump up and pump up and pump up, and for 10 plasma, you increase your warlord's attack by +6/+0, and they also have cleave +3. That's pretty strong. Now, it takes 7 energy to get to that point, and it obviously takes plasma to end the turn. The problem is it's also only this turn, so if you don't kill your enemy warlord with your Hecaton Siege Claw, your plasma is exhausted, your attack goes down, and now your opponent can do whatever they need to do, and you either better have a way to generate a lot more plasma on your next turn or do some damage, because otherwise this will have been a one-trick pony that went off and kind of faltered. And it is a one-trick pony, make no mistake. Now, it's an awesome trick, but that's all it does. And if your opponent can see it coming, they can typically try to find ways to throw frontline at you, do damage, and just take you to 0 before you get to 7 energy, whatever they need to. If you get it off, congrats, good for you. But it takes a little bit. It takes a little bit to get there. Now, Patron Forge, I wish this card was better. 8 cost for a structure that cannot be bounced by Melgator. That's nice. 5/9, okay. That's cool. but this structure doesn't have frontline, and it can't attack. And for 2 energy, it creates a random weapon in your hand that costs 2 less. So you might get a Graviton Cannon for 8. You might get a Hecaton Claw for 5. Or you might just get a Reaper Chain Fist for 0. You don't know what you're going to get. Now, typically the weapons are good, but you're paying 2 to get it for 2 less. You're not paying 1 to get it for 2 less. This isn't a relentless ability. You've exhausted your entire 8 energy pool to put this Patron Forge in play. It feels like this card doesn't deliver for what it is priced out to do. If it had frontline, or if it was just a resolution effect for 8 energy, I think that would be fair. Unshakable Warden. Again, this is another high-cost tactic that just doesn't see play. Great artwork here. Put 2 Night House structures from your deck in play. Your Warlord gains frontline until your next turn. The idea, I think, being that at 8 energy, you would play Unshakable Warden and get 2 Patron Forges out for free. And then your Warlord's got frontline, and now you can create weapons. And that's a cool concept. You're getting 16 energy for 8. That's definitely a cool concept. But you have to have those in your deck, and if you draw them up before you get Wardens, it does nothing. You could put Regulators in play, and that's okay. That's not a bad idea, but again, you have to not draw them. There's a possibility for this to be a deck, but the pieces aren't all there, and Unshakable Warden just to put structures that can't attack and doesn't really do any whole lot of damage doesn't seem fair. Now, if this costs 6, if this costs 7, it might be a little bit better. But as it is right now, it's not getting played. Pass on it. Don't worry about picking this up. This is not going to do anything for you. Volkite. This is the hard removal option. For 3 plasma, it's a very low cost. You might think 3 plasma just to destroy an enemy troop? Why? That's actually like just as much as plasma as it costs to deal 4 damage to a troop. With a can act again. Yes, you're right. However, it cost 8 energy to put this on the Imperial Knights. So that means you have until either the 6 energy mark or the 8 energy mark before you have to worry about a hard removal option if you're playing against Knights. Or if you are the Knight player, you know that you don't have any hard removal options until you get to that point. And that's only if you put the Volkite in your deck, or you have the Corrupt Disruption in your deck. So keep that in mind. Magnolias Can. This is another good one. Doesn't see a whole lot of play because it's high costing for 9, but for 4 plasma, dealing 5 damage to 2 random enemies is pretty cool. Because that can be your enemy Warlord. That can be stealth units. That can be warded units. That can be units with precognition or duplicitous. It's random. That means that has a favor to it for you. Granted, it is 9 energy. But in some matchups, if I've got Maccabeus here, if I've got Markham Hrothman from House Maccabeus, and I'm playing some matchups where I know my opponent has got stealth troops or has got a lot of warded units late game, and I have the option to make a last can, I'm going to put one in my hand just to have it for the ability to target or to deal random damage. So, and then last but not least, we get to Graviton Cannon. This is the game winner. This is the one that seals the deal. For 4 energy, it deals 10 damage. This is 10 for 10. 10 plus for 10 because you have to count in the 4 plasma. But this makes the games over, period. And like I said, if you combine that with something like House Vironi and a drilling site, when you play a Graviton Cannon, you can deal 20 damage for 8 plasma. You have to have 8 plasma. You have to put up the plasma and banked it prior to your 10 energy turn to make that work. That's sometimes a challenge, but usually it's not too difficult if you know that that's what you're going for. So Graviton Cannon is another legendary that you want to pick up. When it comes to legendaries in the shop, Graviton Cannon, the Arcmagos, and House Vironi. Now, House Vironi, if you don't have Graviton Cannon and you don't have any of the good weapons I've listed, and when I say good, I mean the common ones, Battle Cannon and Las Cutter, then you could pass and you could go for the Arcmagos and for Graviton. But if you have Graviton and Magos, then that should be your next purchase, is the House Vironi, without a doubt. Now the Night House's counterattack, that's nice. It heals 1 and it gives 1 to your plasma, 1 plasma. The cool thing about this is that all of the knights are low initiative, except for the Cerastus Orlocks. So if you're playing with Questoros, you're getting 1 extra plasma, unless you're playing against a very low initiative warlord or another low initiative warlord and you lose the roll. Odds are you're going to have this counterattack. So, and this little Reaper Chainsword, this is the one that comes with the Orlock Knight. So instead of a 10 health chainsword, it's a 8 health chainsword. Does the exact same thing. This is just kind of there. This is a token placeholder. That's it. That's the Night Houses. It's taken a long time to get there. You might think, well, that's not so bad until you play against it. Or if you've played against it, you might say, well, you know what? This doesn't do, this doesn't explain or complain enough about how broken and powerful they were or are. I don't think they're broken or powerful anymore. I do think they are powerful to an extent. I think losing the card draw that they had on some of their cards, which would allow them to generate plasma faster than they could deplete it, was a problem. But I do think they are a toolbox faction where every card does something for the warlord, and then the warlord directs the action from there. And you have really got to build your deck appropriately. If you want to draw weapons, and you want to draw weapons that are going to be worthwhile, don't put weapons in your deck that aren't going to do what your deck is set out to do. If you want to be using battle cannon spam, a shock lance just for the heck of it isn't going to do any good. On the other hand, if you're going to be putting in close combat weapons, but you don't have enough plasma or frontline troops or even a gauntlet shield, then you're not going to be keeping your close combat weapons around long enough to make the difference. So there's a big element of deck construction that has to be taken into consideration with them. The secondary energy pool of the plasma will always be problematic for people in the same way that the secondary energy source for Psyker is problematic. However, it can only be used by the weapons. And I think when you look at the cost, for the most part, I mean, if anything, if I had to say Graviton Cannon 4 for 10 feels high costed, yeah, this could be 5 for 10. I think 5 for 10 would be fair. But I really think Volkite is arguably the most undercosted effect. 3 plasma for destroy, when another weapon is 3 plasma just to deal 4 damage. The offset of that is the cost of the actual weapon itself, which is 8 and which is 10 for Graviton Cannon. And those factors are built into the cost of the card, not just the activated ability. The activated ability is then further amplified by the fact that plasma generation typically can only come from 1 unit on the board. Maybe 2 or 3 if they survive. So that's it. That's the card by card for the Night Houses, guys. I'm really curious to hear what you think. How long have you been waiting for this card by card? Do you even care anymore? Did I say enough salt for you for the Night Houses, or not enough salt? I don't know. I can't. I'd like to hear from you in the comments below. If you've stuck around this long, I appreciate it. Keep sticking around. Good grief. Keep sticking around. Now that we've gone through, now that I've finally made it through the Night Houses, which was the last faction in the Angels of Caliban, I can get to the card by card for the Imperial Fists, the Sisters of Silence, and the Angels of the Sigillet, and then start up the Mechanicum and the Chaos card by cards. And those are going to be bigger. Those are going to be probably another 3 videos each, because their factions are just so huge compared to your standard faction size. So yeah, so we're going to get into it at some point, but in the meantime, that's it for me. Keep playing Legions, and we'll talk to you later.